Have you ever felt that your quiet, unseen acts of faith go unnoticed? That the prayers you whisper, the sacrifices you make, and the love you pour out in secret are invisible to the world? What if I told you that nothing escapes the notice of heaven? That every moment of hidden devotion, every silent choice to honor God, is carefully observed and deeply cherished by Him? Today, we are going to explore a truth that has been whispered through the ages, but often overlooked in our busy lives. A truth that reminds us that God values the hidden life of faith more than the applause of the crowd. We are going to dive into the story of the chosen ones, those whose steadfast love, patient obedience, and quiet faithfulness are seen and honored in the heavenly realms, even when no human eye notices. In the next few minutes, you will discover how your silent faith is not only recognized, but celebrated. You will see how the hidden decisions you make every day, the acts of obedience that feel small or insignificant, are actually shaping your destiny. And you will understand why God, who watches over the hearts of men and women, smiles upon what the world might never see. Prepare yourself to see your faith in a new light, to understand the profound spiritual weight of your quiet choices, and to be encouraged that the life you live in secrecy is exactly the life God values most. This is not just a message of hope. It is an invitation to step deeper into the divine pattern of faithfulness, to embrace the path that has been carefully laid out for you, and to recognize that even in obscurity, you are never forgotten. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may change the way you see your own life, your faith, and your purpose. This is the story of the hidden, the unseen, the faithful, the chosen ones. Part 1. The desire to be seen and valued by God. Have you ever paused in the middle of your day and wondered if anyone truly notices the choices you make when no one is watching? The truth is, human recognition is fleeting, inconsistent, and often dependent on circumstances beyond our control. Yet there is a higher audience, a divine presence that observes the heart and weighs actions in ways we cannot measure. In Scripture, we see countless examples of individuals whose devotion was hidden from the public eye, yet profoundly significant in God's plan. Take Hannah, for instance, in 1 Samuel. She was not a public figure. She did not stand on stages or deliver speeches. She knelt quietly in the temple, pouring out her soul in prayer, her lips trembling as she whispered words that only God could hear. To the people around her, it may have seemed like a private, even ordinary, act. But heaven recorded it. That silent act of faith birthed a prophet who would play a pivotal role in Israel's history. This illustrates a timeless principle. God sees what humans often overlook. The hidden life of devotion carries weight far beyond what we perceive. Every refusal to compromise, every choice to remain faithful in the face of difficulty, every small act of love, these are not unnoticed. They are like ripples sent into the spiritual realm, touching eternity in ways that may remain invisible for now, but will one day manifest in profound ways. The desire to be seen is natural. It is part of being human. We long for validation, for acknowledgement, for someone to recognize the sacrifices we make. But the Bible teaches us that true faithfulness is measured not by public applause, but by quiet obedience. In Matthew 6:6, Jesus instructs, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." This principle challenges the common mindset of measuring spiritual success by visible results or immediate recognition. The world rewards performance, visibility, and achievement. God rewards faithfulness, persistence, and a heart aligned with His will, even when it is unseen. The chosen ones are those who understand this. They continue to love, serve, forgive, and obey, not for acknowledgement, but because their allegiance to God is deep, steadfast, and unshakable. Consider the story of the woman who anointed Jesus with expensive perfume in Luke 7. She did not seek praise. Her actions were private, sacrificial, and extravagant in devotion. Jesus called it beautiful, recognizing the heart behind the act rather than the outward performance. In the same way, every silent choice you make to honor God matters. Every small act of obedience, patience, and love, though unnoticed by the world, is celebrated in heaven. In practical terms, Part 1 asks us to examine our own lives. Which moments are you quietly choosing faithfulness over convenience? When have you resisted anger, refused gossip, or extended forgiveness in secret? These moments, though small and often unnoticed, are building spiritual momentum. They are forming a legacy, sowing seeds that will bear fruit in seasons to come. Heaven notices the heart more than the hand. God's gaze is fixed not on the grandeur of the act, but on the faithfulness that undergirds it. In a world that prizes spectacle, the chosen ones understand that quiet obedience is not weak. It is powerful. It is the fragrance of devotion that rises before the throne. It is the echo of love that shakes the spiritual realm. Part 2. The power of hidden faithfulness. Small acts, eternal impact. In the rhythm of everyday life, it is often the small, unnoticed choices that carry the greatest weight in God's eternal plan. Human eyes are drawn to the spectacular, the loud, the public. Heaven, however, measures the heart, the quiet fidelity that persists when no one is watching. Hidden faithfulness is a recurring theme throughout Scripture. Think of Joseph in Genesis. He was young, sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned, invisible to the world in every sense. Yet, in those quiet moments, Joseph's integrity and unwavering devotion to God positioned him for influence, power, and the salvation of nations. What appeared as obscurity was actually preparation. What seemed like delay was divine strategy. His faithfulness, even when unnoticed, reshaped history. Similarly, Daniel's devotion in Babylon shows us the same principle. 3 times a day, he prayed, not in public squares, but in a private room facing Jerusalem. Even under threat of persecution, he did not compromise. His hidden discipline became a spiritual fortress, and ultimately, it influenced kings and empires. The spiritual principle is clear. Consistent faithfulness, even in obscurity, moves heaven. Every small, faithful action you take carries eternal impact. A quiet prayer whispered in distress, a patient response when insulted, a moment of self-control when anger rises. These are the offerings that the Spirit records. Every act of obedience is like a seed planted in fertile soil. It may not sprout immediately, but it is guaranteed to bear fruit in due time. Consider this. Obedience does not always yield visible results, yet it triggers movement in the spiritual realm. Angels are dispatched, favor is activated, and doors begin to open. The unseen realm is intricately responsive to the faithfulness of those who choose God above convenience. The ripple effect of hidden devotion stretches far beyond what we can comprehend. It breaks generational cycles, overcomes spiritual resistance, and releases supernatural provision. A key biblical example of this is found in the widow of Luke 21:3. She gave 2 small coins, insignificant by human standards. Yet Jesus said her offering was greater than that of the rich because she gave from her heart, sacrificially and unseen. Heaven values the devotion behind the act, not its size or visibility. Your small acts of faith, when offered in sincerity, become catalysts for transformation in your life and the lives of others. The spiritual law of hidden faithfulness can be applied practically in daily life. When you resist gossip, control your anger, forgive quietly, or extend kindness when it is undeserved, you're not only aligning with God's will, but also generating spiritual momentum. These choices may feel insignificant, but they build a foundation for greater assignments, deeper wisdom, and divine favor. Hidden faithfulness also cultivates resilience. It teaches patience, strengthens character, and builds a spirit that remains steadfast even under pressure. This is not perfection, it is persistence. It is the repeated yes to God, especially when the heart feels weary, when emotions are dry, or when circumstances are difficult. This is the hallmark of the chosen ones, those who love God not for what they receive, but because their love is rooted, tested, and mature. It is essential to recognize that God's rewards are not always immediate or visible. Faithfulness often precedes breakthrough. Like the 10 lepers in Luke 17, healing sometimes follows action before understanding. Your obedience may feel unnoticed, your prayers may feel unanswered, yet the divine process is underway. Heaven is orchestrating a response that will surpass human comprehension. This principle calls us to reframe how we perceive spiritual success. It is not about public recognition, social media affirmation, or applause from peers. Spiritual success is measured by fidelity, the consistency of your heart in choosing God, in resisting compromise, and in walking in righteousness, even when no one else notices. Your hidden faithfulness is not small, it is the architecture of destiny.
Part 3. Divine timing and the unseen ripples of obedience. One of the most profound principles in the spiritual life is that timing matters. God's timing is never hurried, never late, and always perfect. Often, the faithful act in quiet obedience without seeing immediate results. Yet, these acts set in motion ripples that the human eye cannot perceive, but heaven watches closely. Consider the story of Abraham. When he was called to sacrifice Isaac, the human perspective saw only risk and loss. Yet in that quiet act of obedience, Abraham's faith was being refined, and a covenant of blessing was being reinforced. He stepped forward without certainty of outcome, trusting that God's promises were real even when circumstances suggested otherwise. That tension between unseen preparation and visible outcome is a hallmark of divine timing. Every hidden yes you speak to God, every act of integrity, every choice of purity, every moment of patience, is like a stone dropped into the vast ocean of eternity. The ripples may not be immediately visible, yet they reach far and wide. They touch lives you may never see, circumstances that seem distant, and open doors that once appeared closed. Your obedience becomes a catalyst for divine movement, aligning your life with heavenly strategy. The spiritual realm is not passive. Angels observe, record, and respond to faithfulness. In Daniel's story, while he prayed quietly, angels were actively engaged, ensuring protection and providing guidance that eventually led to political and spiritual influence. Likewise, your consistent devotion, even in the absence of applause, triggers unseen mechanisms in heaven that pave the way for breakthrough, favor, and alignment with God's purpose. It is essential to note that divine timing often involves a period of waiting, a testing ground where your faithfulness is refined. The Bible frequently illustrates this pattern. Noah building the ark before the rain, Joseph enduring years in prison, Moses shepherding in the wilderness. In each case, the visible results were delayed, yet every moment of obedience contributed to the ultimate outcome. Waiting is not inactivity, it is preparation. Each decision made faithfully during these seasons accumulates spiritual capital. Hidden obedience also shapes character. It molds patience, deepens trust, and fortifies the spirit against distractions, doubts, and emotional turbulence. When you choose God in moments of isolation, your faith grows resilient. The endurance required in these silent seasons builds a foundation that allows you to handle greater responsibility, influence, and blessing when the divine moment arrives. Even when it feels as though nothing is happening, heaven is not idle. Scripture reminds us in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your quiet faithfulness is being counted, measured, and stored for a moment when God will reveal its full impact. You may not see the effects immediately, but the unseen is more powerful than the visible. Practical example in modern life. When you resist a habitual sin, extend forgiveness, or serve someone without recognition, these small acts may seem insignificant. Yet in the spiritual realm, they are recorded as testimony, stored as favor, and prepared to catalyze opportunities beyond your imagination. Just like the widow who gave her 2 small coins, your faithfulness in what seems minor carries disproportionate weight in heaven. Unseen ripples of obedience also create alignment with purpose. Your life begins to intersect with circumstances, people, and opportunities that were inaccessible before. What once seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary because you have positioned yourself within God's timing. Divine timing ensures that blessings, promotions, and breakthroughs do not just happen randomly, but in a sequence that maximizes their impact and sustains their fruitfulness. As we reflect on these truths, it becomes clear that spiritual maturity is not about the immediate result, but about consistency and alignment with God's will. Love, real love, manifests not through emotion or convenience, but through disciplined, persistent choice. The ripple effect of each quiet obedience compounds, ultimately shaping your destiny and creating testimony that extends beyond your personal life into generational influence. Part 4. Supernatural favor and the spiritual mechanics of reward. When we speak of favor, it is crucial to understand that God's favor is not random luck. It is a spiritual principle, a tangible expression of divine alignment with the choices of obedience, faithfulness, and love that you make, often in the unseen spaces of life. Supernatural favor flows where faithfulness has been proven, where hidden devotion has been consistent, and where the heart remains aligned with God's will. Scriptures provide numerous illustrations of this principle. Joseph's life, for instance, shows us that favor can emerge even amidst adversity. From the pit to Pharaoh's palace, every act of integrity, every choice not to compromise, every silent prayer, and every step of obedience contributed to a cumulative favor that positioned him for leadership, influence, and the saving of nations. Notice that Joseph's favor was not immediate. It was built over years of trials, setbacks, and hidden diligence. This demonstrates the spiritual mechanics of reward. Faithful actions generate momentum, even if invisible, and that momentum attracts divine resources when the timing is right. Favor often manifests in ways that are subtle yet life-altering. A word spoken at the right time, an opportunity appearing unexpectedly, doors opening where barriers once existed. These are the natural expressions of supernatural alignment. Heaven honors hidden devotion and turns the ordinary into extraordinary. Every prayer, every moment of self-control, every choice to forgive, and every act of obedience contributes to this process. Consider also the principle of sowing and reaping, a cornerstone of biblical teaching. Galatians 6:9 states, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Every act of faith, no matter how small or unseen, is a seed planted. The harvest may not appear immediately. God ensures that your investment of obedience, love, and faithfulness produces results in His perfect timing. The magnitude of the harvest often reflects the depth of faithfulness in the planting stage. An essential aspect of supernatural favor is its alignment with purpose. God does not bless actions divorced from His plan. Favor flows where hearts are consecrated, intentions are pure, and decisions reflect spiritual priorities over temporal convenience. Hidden obedience positions you to receive breakthroughs that are not merely beneficial in the moment, but that cultivate long-term impact. Your life begins to intersect with divine opportunities that are inaccessible without this alignment. The unseen spiritual forces also respond to this favor. Angels are dispatched to prepare circumstances, to protect, and to open pathways. Likewise, opposition in the form of spiritual resistance often intensifies when favor is being released. This is not a sign of failure, but evidence that the enemy recognizes the value of what God is about to manifest in your life. The greater the potential of divine reward, the more fiercely spiritual opposition may rise, but your persistent faithfulness ensures that favor prevails. Another key principle is that favor is cumulative. Each faithful decision, each choice to remain steadfast in prayer, each act of integrity, even when unnoticed, adds to the reservoir of divine resources available to you. What may seem minor, like a silent act of obedience or a simple decision to uphold righteousness, carries eternal weight. Heaven responds not to the magnitude of human recognition, but to the quality of faithfulness, the depth of love, and the steadfastness of devotion. To understand favor fully, one must also recognize its transformative effect. Supernatural favor does more than open doors. It changes the person who receives it. As blessings and opportunities align with your faithfulness, you are strengthened, your faith matures, and your capacity for influence increases. In other words, favor is not only about what God does for you, it is also about who He is shaping you to become. The process of receiving favor is intertwined with personal and spiritual growth, reinforcing that the journey matters as much as the outcome. Finally, favor in the spiritual realm often bypasses human limitations. When God's hand is upon a person, barriers that seem insurmountable collapse. Relationships are restored, situations are transformed, and resources appear in ways that defy natural explanation. This is the divine response to hidden, faithful devotion. Unseen yes spoken in obedience resonates in the spiritual realm, producing measurable change in the natural world. Part 5. Breakthrough and transformation through faithful obedience. Faithful obedience is the linchpin that connects hidden devotion to visible breakthrough. The choices you make in private, resisting temptation, choosing integrity, offering forgiveness, praying when weary, are not simply moral exercises. They are spiritual investments, laying the foundation for transformation that God Himself orchestrates. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes this principle. Quiet, steadfast obedience produces results that resonate beyond the immediate moment, often in ways that defy human expectation. Consider the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1. Her prayers were silent, her sorrow unnoticed by the world, yet her steadfast devotion was seen and honored by God. That unseen act of obedience birthed Samuel, a prophet who would shape the course of Israel's history. Hannah's faithfulness was a seed planted in secrecy, and her breakthrough unfolded according to divine timing, demonstrating a key spiritual truth. What is faithful in the shadows becomes monumental in the light. Breakthrough is not always instantaneous. Often, it arrives after prolonged seasons of discipline, endurance, and quiet surrender. Moments when life feels stagnant or your prayers seem unanswered are precisely the periods where spiritual transformation is taking place. Like refining gold, pressure and fire produce resilience, strength, and maturity. Each act of obedience, though unseen, is a hammer shaping your character, preparing you to handle the fullness of what God intends to release. Transformation, therefore, is both internal and external. Internally, faithful obedience cultivates spiritual maturity, discernment, and endurance. Your heart becomes aligned with God's purposes, your will synchronized with His, and your character strengthened to reflect His image more clearly. Externally, this alignment positions you to receive divine interventions, opportunities, and favor. Your inner life is sanctified through obedience. The external world responds in alignment with God's promises, often in ways that surprise and exceed expectation. The principle of incremental progress is critical here. Small acts of faithfulness compound over time, creating momentum in the spiritual realm. Each refusal to compromise, each prayer whispered in secret, each sacrifice made without recognition adds to a spiritual trajectory that leads inevitably to breakthrough. The enemy may attempt to obscure progress, but consistent obedience activates heavenly resources that cannot be nullified by human opposition. We also see through Scripture that transformation often involves a shift in identity. As you walk in obedience, God shapes not only your circumstances but your very self. You are being prepared to operate in higher levels of spiritual authority, influence, and purpose. The trials and tests of today serve as training grounds. Your endurance and loyalty produce a new pattern of response. Faith replacing fear, wisdom replacing impulsivity, patience replacing frustration. Transformation is the cumulative effect of repeated, faithful choices under pressure. Breakthrough is therefore both personal and generational. The faithfulness you exercise impacts not only your immediate situation, but also the spiritual legacy of those around you. Just as Joseph's obedience saved his family and the surrounding nations, your consistent alignment with God opens pathways for others, dismantling cycles of limitation, sin, or adversity that may have persisted through generations. Faithful obedience produces consequences far beyond the visible horizon of your life. It is important to recognize that breakthroughs are rarely loud or conspicuous at first. They often begin as subtle shifts in circumstances, new clarity in decision-making, or unexpected alignment of resources. However, the spiritual realm is attentive to these details. Angels watch over the faithful, and God's hand moves in proportion to your alignment with His will. Your hidden obedience acts as a signal, a spiritual declaration that you are ready for the next level of destiny. Furthermore, transformation through obedience carries an enduring quality. Unlike temporary relief or momentary success, breakthroughs rooted in steadfast faith produce lasting fruit. The internal changes you undergo, the strengthening of character, the refinement of motives, and the alignment of heart with God, ensure that you are equipped to steward the blessings, responsibilities, and opportunities that arise. Spiritual breakthroughs that emerge from consistent obedience are not fleeting. They are structural, forming a foundation for long-term purpose and impact. Finally, the interplay between faithfulness and breakthrough underscores the essential principle that God's economy operates differently from the world's. While human systems often reward visibility, speed, or popularity, God's kingdom measures by faithfulness, perseverance, and depth of devotion. Every silent yes, every refusal to compromise, and every act of love performed in obscurity contributes to a divine tapestry that culminates in both transformation and reward. Part 6. Practical application of faithful obedience. Faithful obedience is not just a theological concept. It is a lived experience that manifests in everyday choices. The challenge lies in translating spiritual principles into actionable steps that shape our character, influence our environment, and align us with God's will. The practical application of obedience begins with awareness, recognizing the moments when your choices matter, even if no one else notices. First, consider your thought life. Obedience begins in the mind, where you choose to reject negative patterns, self-doubt, or destructive imaginations. Scripture reminds us in Philippians 4:8 to focus on what is true, noble, and praiseworthy. Every thought that aligns with God's truth, every mental discipline that refuses anxiety, anger, or bitterness, becomes an act of obedience. The unseen victories in your mind are the precursor to visible transformation. Second, focus on speech. Words carry immense spiritual weight. Every act of restraint, choosing encouragement over criticism, silence over gossip, reconciliation over retaliation, is obedience in practice. Proverbs 18:21 emphasizes that life and death are in the power of the tongue. By speaking in alignment with God's character, even in private or difficult moments, you are actively participating in kingdom-building work that has both immediate and eternal impact. Third, let your actions reflect integrity. This includes decisions small and large. Honoring commitments, helping others quietly, refusing shortcuts that compromise values, and prioritizing what aligns with God's calling over temporary convenience. Just as Joseph's obedience in Potiphar's house, despite being unnoticed and unappreciated, led to his elevation, your consistent actions of integrity set the stage for breakthrough. Obedience is cumulative. Small, faithful steps compound to produce extraordinary outcomes. Fourth, cultivate spiritual disciplines. Prayer, scripture reading, fasting, and worship are not mere routines. They are vehicles for divine alignment. Even when emotions feel dry or circumstances seem stagnant, maintaining these disciplines demonstrates loyalty that heaven records. Luke 17:14 illustrates that healing required action. The lepers were instructed to show themselves to the priests. Their obedience activated their breakthrough. Similarly, your consistent spiritual practices, even when unseen or undervalued, prepare the way for God's intervention. Fifth, embrace resilience in testing and temptation. Obedience often manifests most powerfully under pressure. Choosing humility over pride, patience over frustration, and faith over fear in challenging circumstances strengthens character and demonstrates commitment to God's principles. Wilderness experiences of biblical figures, from Jesus to David to Daniel, highlight that enduring hardship with obedience cultivates spiritual authority. Resistance is not a sign of failure. It is the proving ground for future elevation. Sixth, create intentional space for solitude and reflection. Many breakthroughs are birthed in quiet, undisturbed moments. Just as Jesus withdrew to pray in solitude, setting aside time to listen, reflect, and align with God allows your spirit to receive guidance, strength, and clarity. Solitude transforms routine obedience into intentional alignment with divine purpose, ensuring your actions are not reactive but deliberate. Seventh, recognize the compound effect of consistency. Repeated acts of obedience, though seemingly insignificant individually, produce spiritual momentum. Over time, these acts shape character, align circumstances, and position you to receive opportunities that match God's plan. Like seeds planted in fertile soil, your consistent yes in private cultivates harvests that exceed human comprehension. Finally, maintain perspective on reward and timing. Breakthrough often unfolds according to divine timing, not human expectation. While the world prioritizes immediate results, God honors perseverance and faithfulness. Hebrews 11:6 reminds us that God rewards those who diligently seek Him. Your unseen acts of devotion, every refusal to compromise, every prayer whispered in isolation, are not wasted. They accumulate spiritual weight that activates favor, transformation, and legacy. Practical obedience, therefore, is both strategic and spiritual. It is the deliberate choice to align thought, word, and action with God's will, regardless of immediate visibility or recognition. Each faithful step sets the stage for divine acceleration, revealing that obedience is not merely a duty, but a pathway to transformation and manifestation of God's promises. Conclusion: the legacy of hidden obedience. As we draw this reflection to a close, it becomes evident that the journey of faith is not measured by applause, visibility, or worldly success. Rather, it is measured by the fidelity of the heart, the consistency of obedience, and the courage to say yes to God even when the world is silent. What may appear small in the eyes of men, a whispered prayer, a discreet act of kindness, a decision to resist temptation, carries immense weight in the spiritual realm. Heaven records every detail, and God honors devotion that arises from sincerity and perseverance. Throughout this exploration, we have seen that obedience in secret is not incidental, it is formative. The quiet moments where you resist compromise, extend grace, or remain faithful despite discouragement are shaping your character, fortifying your spirit, and positioning you for divine opportunities. Scripture repeatedly affirms this principle. The Most High observes the heart, values intention over performance, and rewards those who seek Him diligently. Lives of biblical figures such as Hannah, Joseph, Daniel, and Ruth demonstrate the transformative power of hidden faithfulness. These individuals did not seek recognition. Their loyalty to God in private spaces produced results that reshaped nations, influenced generations, and manifested divine purpose. Likewise, your persistent obedience, though unseen by many, is preparing the ground for breakthroughs, favor, and legacy that will reverberate far beyond the present moment. It is also critical to recognize that spiritual growth is incremental. Transformation occurs through consistent, deliberate choices, one faithful act at a time. Every prayer whispered in solitude, every temptation resisted, every moment of humility, patience, and self-control strengthens your spiritual foundation. Like a tree whose roots extend deep into fertile soil, your faith is being anchored in the unseen, and the harvest will emerge in due season. The call, then, is to remain steadfast. Walk with intentionality, not for recognition, but in alignment with divine purpose. To embrace the discipline of quiet devotion, knowing that God is attentive and heaven responds to persistence born of love. Your journey is not about perfection, it is about faithfulness. It is not about grandeur, it is about consistency. And it is not about immediate results, it is about eternal significance. As this message concludes, let it settle in your spirit that your unseen choices, your hidden victories, and your private acts of obedience are all forming a legacy that heaven honors. You are being prepared for a season of revelation, reward, and responsibility. Your yes in the darkness has already set into motion divine movements that will become evident in time. Take this moment to reflect, to realign, and to recommit. Let your heart remain loyal, your steps deliberate, and your spirit receptive. The journey continues, and every act of faithfulness, no matter how small, contributes to a story that God is authoring. A story of love, devotion, and transformation that will bear fruit in ways you cannot yet fully comprehend. Walk forward with courage, confidence, and hope. Trust that your hidden obedience is not wasted. Trust that the Most High sees, honors, and responds. Know that you are chosen, seen, and deeply loved. This is the essence of faithful living. Hidden obedience that shapes eternity, quiet devotion that moves heaven, and steadfast love that transforms both your life and the world around you.